So I've been getting some great questions about fruit lately, and there's a lot of debate about whether we should be eating fruit or not. My opinion about fruit has certainly changed over the years, so we're going to try not to be too psycho in one direction or other of the argument. We'll leave that up to some folks in the comments for sure, but we're going to look at the science of fruit and understand when it could be beneficial, when it might be problematic, and we'll even look at the circumstances where fruit is really going to cause some trouble. Let's jump in.
TC Hale is not a doctor and does not claim to be a doctor or licensed in any type of medical field. Don't be an idiot and use anything heard on the show as medical advice. This information should be used for educational purposes only, and you should contact your doctor for any medical advice. Now get off me.
So when we're looking at fruit and who should be eating fruit, who might need to avoid fruit, we need to look at different factors when it comes to fructose. And fructose is a little bit different than glucose. It actually gets metabolized more in the liver. So if a person's having a hard time processing glucose correctly, they sometimes do a little bit better with fructose, and maybe they process that a little bit better, so they might do okay with some fruit, where other forms of carbohydrates might give them a lot of trouble. But if somebody's having a lot of liver trouble, they might not be able to metabolize that fruit as well, and that can be problematic for them. But we want to understand that it does metabolize a little bit differently, and a big factor when we're looking at fructose is that we have to understand its process on uric acid. It really has the ability to raise levels of uric acid, and high levels of uric acid in the body can create a wide variety of trouble, including insulin resistance. So we kind of want to watch what we're doing with uric acid, and a lot of people are not talking about this a lot, but when we're looking at uric acid going high from fructose, in most situations it's going to be from high fructose corn syrup, which is almost in everything. You can't even buy a Toyota Camry without it having high fructose corn syrup in the ingredients. Like, it's just everywhere. And it's become a big problem. This is a very cheap way to sweeten things, and the problem is it puts this fructose in a very high level in the body, more than it can really process correctly, so it creates a whole lot of trouble. So when people are running in horror from fruit, a lot of times it's because of that fructose in the fruit, but the level of fructose in fruit is nothing compared to the processed junk food that we're consuming. High fructose corn syrup has a very high level of fructose. It's right in the name, high fructose corn syrup. So if we're looking at, oh, I'm really worried about the amount of fructose coming in, we really need to look at the other foods. So whether this is a problem when you're just looking at the fructose factor will really depend on your diet. If you're eating real food, bringing in some fructose from fruit is usually not going to be a problem. Now, if you're eating like an 8th grader and you're just eating out of a vending machine and all this processed junk, now your body has a real burden with this very high level of fructose that it's dealing with. So now, when you're eating fruit, you're really just kind of piling on a problem that's already there. So from my viewpoint, that can become problematic if your diet is already really poor. Some people are like, oh, well, I'm going to eat fruit because it's supposed to be healthy, but if they're really piling on all the fructose with all this processed junk, then eating fruit is really not doing them a lot of benefits like they're viewing it. Now, you might be able to view it like, oh, I'm going to put down these corn chips and eat an apple, so now that fruit really benefited because you didn't eat the junk food right there. But the big point to understand is that we don't really need to run in horror from fructose in fruit. Fructose can be very problematic, but that's usually from processed junk food. But we do need to kind of think about the blood sugar aspect. And we want to understand that just because this fructose processes differently doesn't mean it's not going to raise your blood sugar. It absolutely can raise your blood sugar. So if someone is leaning on that insulin resistant side, they're already having a hard time dealing and processing that glucose that's in the blood already. So doing anything that's going to raise that and really magnify the body's need to raise insulin even higher has the ability to be problematic for that person. Again, this is going to go back to the person's diet. What else is going on? You can't really just look at fruit as a single factor when a person is consuming other types of foods, and what kind of a burden are they giving to the body to understand how much of a burden any type of fruit sugar is going to be. But when we're looking at blood sugar, we have to understand the glycemic impact, and that's really going to vary from different types of fruits. A banana or watermelon might have a bigger impact than something like berries. So we really want to look at the different glycemic impacts that different types of fruits are usually going to have, especially if we're dealing with something like insulin resistance, or we're having a hard time with weight, or we're doing issues where our blood sugar is not stable and it's spiking and crashing. You know, the sugars that come in on these fruits still count and have the ability to create blood sugar spikes, which can spike insulin, or can spike blood sugar in a way that's going to create a blood sugar crash. And blood sugar crashes can create a lot of trouble in the body as well. So along with some of these studies on fruits that I'll put in the link in the description below the video, I'll put a link to a page where you can look at different glycemic index values for different types of fruits to see which may fit your needs the most. But another thing that we need to think about when we're looking at fruits is, are we having organic fruit or just conventional fruit? And this can really be a big deal when it comes to fruit. I view this as more important with fruit than some other types of produce. And we want to look at the mineral levels, and there's been some studies where people kind of looked at, well, there really isn't much of a difference in the mineral levels of conventional fruit and organic fruit. But this really depends on who's growing the fruit. What's going on with that soil? Are they taking care of that soil in a way that allows the minerals to be there in the soil so that they can make it into the fruit in the first place? It's definitely possible to grow organic produce without taking care of the soil, but one thing that we need to think about is that the minerals in that fruit there is something that helps the plant defend itself from invaders like bugs and insects and things like that. So generally speaking, a plant really needs to have more minerals to be able to defend itself when it's not using these insecticides and such to defend itself. So just from that viewpoint, I kind of view organic as going to have more minerals in it. And these minerals are really beneficial in helping the body process the sugars and the fructose in these fruits. So I feel like it's worth just going organic when it comes to fruit, just to increase your chance of the minerals being higher in that food. Another thing to think about when we're looking at the toxins coming in is, if it's going to be sprayed with insecticides, we want to look at, well, is this a fruit where I'm eating the skin, where that insecticide was sprayed right onto the skin and I'm just going to shove that down my gullet? Or is this a fruit that I might be peeling a skin off so that it will have a lower level of insecticides? Those insecticides still get into the fruit without the skin, but this is worth looking at when you're looking at the benefits or harms from fruit. And what we're not talking about here is doing a fruitarian diet, or somebody's like, oh yeah, you just eat fruit, that's all you do, maybe some nuts or seeds or something. I don't view that as a beneficial circumstance. We'll talk in a second why some people may benefit from this, but the body needs certain resources. It needs specific nutrients that you can get from animal sources. And I've talked in a lot of other videos about when you're not bringing those in, the body is going to get them anyways. And a lot of times, the place that it gets it from is you. So when you're not bringing in these amino acids and amino acid cofactors and B12 and all these things that the body needs from animal sources, the body will break down your own tissues to access those nutrients. So a lot of times people feel a whole lot better when they go vegan or vegetarian, but over time it has the ability to create trouble. And I'll put a link in the description below for our video about trouble that can happen down the road with a vegan diet. But we want to look at the fact that I'm not suggesting that someone just eat fruit. We're just looking at circumstances where fruit could be beneficial or might have the ability to cause trouble. And the biggest factor when it comes to fruit being great or not so great is going to be digestive malfunctions or maybe some food sensitivity issues. And if someone is having a food sensitivity to a fruit, then consuming that fruit is not doing them any favors. You're putting a burden on the body. The body is viewing this as an invader, and it's really creating inflammation and stress in the body. And this is one reason why somebody will go like on a carnivore diet, or I removed all these vegetable and fruit fibers and I feel so much better. And a lot of times there's just food sensitivities going on where the body's kind of going to war against an apple or something. So that's why people feel a lot better when they remove those. We also want to think about different malfunctions where if someone is not creating enough stomach acid, which is very common, or someone's bile is not flowing out of their gallbladder correctly because it's become too thick and sticky to flow correctly, now the person can't break down proteins correctly, and they also can't emulsify dietary fats and allow the body to use them. So now these foods become a burden because they're not being properly broken down, and when a person eats them, they feel really lousy. So then they go, I'm going to eat some fruit, and now I feel a whole lot better. Fruit is much easier to digest without stomach acid working correctly or without your bile flowing correctly. So that's why people are like, oh man, fruit is better for you. Just eat fruit. That's all you eat. You're going to be golden. But these people are feeling that way because of digestive malfunctions. If they could fix these digestive malfunctions, then they would be able to break down protein and emulsify dietary fats and give the body all the nutrients that it really needs to function correctly. So if you're not sure if that's the case for you, we'll put a link in the description below for our totally free digestion course, and that'll walk you through figuring out which aspects of digestion may not be working correctly and steps you can take to improve those. But one common misconception is that, oh, if you're constipated, you need to eat fruit. Fruit fixes constipation because of the fibers in the fruit. And if somebody's just on the fence, it can be a little bit beneficial, but this is a myth. Eating more fruit does not fix constipation, and in some cases, it can magnify the problem a little bit. What we really want to look at, it's going to be problematic or not problematic when it comes to fruit, is if somebody is dealing with some type of digestive overgrowth, where maybe there's bacteria here in the stomach where it shouldn't be, or a lot of bacteria in the small intestine, or maybe it's a yeast, mold, fungal type overgrowth as well. Either of these can be problematic. But the problem with fruit is that they contain a lot of fermentable fibers and other types of sugars that really kind of activate these bacteria. So if there's an overgrowth here where it shouldn't be, and now you're going to put these fermentable fibers in that really make these bacteria get activated and cause them to ferment these fibers, which creates a lot more gases. Now, when there's a lot more gases in these areas, that's going to create a lot more pressure, which can really magnify bloating or cramping, or why do I look pregnant when I'm a dude, or other problems like reflux, where all this gas and pressure is pushing things back up and creating reflux symptoms. So I hear from a lot of people who are like, oh, when I eat fruit, I really magnify all these symptoms. And that's what's going on. There's some type of overgrowth that is when you put the fruit in there, they're like, yeah, this is party time now. So then when the person avoids fruit, they feel and function a whole lot better. But it's really not that the fruit is evil. It's really more about the fact that they have a problem that needs to be corrected. Now, for a long time, I really didn't eat much fruit because I just didn't want that level of carbs. I felt and functioned a whole lot better when I didn't consume a lot of carbs. But over time, a very low carb or no carb diet has the ability to create imbalances in the body that can create trouble for some people. Not all people, but for some people. I have a lot of videos that talk about problems that can come from going too low carb for far too long. But now I do fine with some fruit from time to time. I certainly don't do a fruitarian diet. That's not what I'm doing at. But I do fine with some fruit from time to time. And one thing to understand is that a lot of people believe that if you cut out all of these fermentable fibers that come from fruit, now you're taking away a good food source from the good bacteria that should be in your large intestine. And there's specific types of bacteria when they're not getting a source of resources like this, like these fermentable fibers, that they'll start to consume your mucus layer in your digestive tract, which can create a lot of these inflammation issues or leaky gut problems that result back to these food sensitivity issues, which have us running in horror from specific foods. So there really can be some benefits from fruit, but you really want to make sure that you qualify. You want to make sure that you're not way insulin resistant. You want to make sure that you're not eating all of this other junk that's really not raising the fructose levels in the body. And you want to make sure that you don't have an overgrowth situation. What's great is that there's methods now that we can kind of get an idea if there's an overgrowth going on at home. So if you want to understand this, you can jump over right now and check out our video on how to check SIBO at home. And that'll show you some simple tests that'll give you an idea of, oh, should I be eating fruit or do I need to fix some problems first? Or you can jump over and check out our other video on does fruit magnify or improve digestive symptoms? I hope this helps.